Thandi. Lovely to have you join us, Thandi.
Morning, Sean, and good morning, colleagues. There's a lot that I can talk about, but I'll just limit it to just a few. Firstly, on the issue around the procurement being used, or the commission talking about their responsibilities and it taps into procurement. And there was a book that I read, I can't remember the name of the book, but it said something about state capture on the title of the book. And it was quite amazing that different countries use different ways to capture the state. Some use the electoral system through the voting system. Some use legislation whereby they put laws that favors those that want to capture the state. And then with us, then we have procurement, among other things. And with South Africa, it's procurement and also even appointment of people in governance structures like your boards and so forth. But with the state capture, obviously, it came out strongly in terms of procurement. And also, there was this book that I was reading, I think I also posted on LinkedIn from Peter Horst that talks about corporate governance and illicit conduct. I'm still of the strong view that as much as we're talking so robustly about the wrong things that are happening in procurement and how ineffective our rules are, I feel that we're not talking as much about the caliber of the procurement practitioners that we're bringing into the space. There's only so much that the law can make. It pains me that we celebrate catching people who are corrupt as if our core function is to catch corrupt people. Our core function is to deliver a service, and money is lost. I mean, if you look at how much SIU has spent in investigating what they have investigated vis-a-vis how much they're going to get back, it's a huge loss, and therefore, for me, I think now we need to make more noise about professionalizing this profession and also investing more on the caliber of people that you bring into the space, because whatever that was done by a human being, Sean, it can be broken somewhere. No matter how good the systems may be. So I feel that every time when something goes wrong, we want to go back to our rules. When I was doing my research for my MBA, my view has always been that corporate governance is not enabling for government. That the way it's done, you can't say the minister should not be talking to the CEO because he's interfering. Because the minister needs to talk because he had a manifesto, he needs to make sure that it has been implemented properly. And one of the respondents said to me, you can't make that assessment when you have not implemented corporate governance in its entirety. And right now, we are quick to jump and say that our rules are wrong, when some of them actually we have proved that they have not been implemented in its entirety. So now maybe we should be talking about the caliber of practitioners.
Right. Good one.
As analyzing the profession. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Tabello. Hi, Tabello. Welcome.
Hi, Sean. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Sean, I don't know. I think in most of these cases, nothing is new under the sun in terms of what's happening here. It's things that we've known, that we've seen happen.
We know this,
over a period of time. And my view, which is a bit different to my colleague who just spoke before, is that it is not about the caliber of practitioners. I think it's always about the leadership that you have. The leadership sets the tone. If the leadership creates an environment which is enabling for this sort of thing, then obviously this thing, the issue relating to pliable practitioners, it will be them that will institute those things. If a leadership stands and is morally correct and they ensure that they uproot any form of corruption, then the institutions will be okay. So we must start maybe to the tone on the top. There's no way that you can sit there with an organization that is led on people that have no ethics, lack morals in terms of where they want to take the country to, and then you assume that that will be fine. They set the tone. They're the ones that discipline. They're the ones that get rid of people. They're the ones that employ people. So you must start with the top. Forget the practitioners. I think those are the converted ones. Within a confined space, within an ethical institution, none of this will be taking place.
Thanks, Tabello. Good. Let's quickly go to Sanele. Just a short one, Sanele, and then we'll keep going.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sean. You see, for me, I'll always say it's politically, the system is flawed. You have two kinds of hierarchy. You have a political hierarchy, you have a professional hierarchy. The political hierarchy is not professional. There's less concern with education and so on whatsoever. But funny enough, they are monitoring or they are supervising the specialist. Now you get this person who is supervising the DG, but is going to report to a branch chairperson who is a level 5 in the same institution. So now the DG can't discipline this level 5 because he is the chairperson of the MEC. So the system is flawed. You just need, the political parties need to just look into this.
Interesting.
All together before we even get to how we get to this whole mess of the counterpart.
Good one, Sanele. I'm sure you've got more. Let's just go to Sibongile, and go ahead, Sibongile.
For me, I'd say if there's anything that the state capture inquiry has taught us or teach government, is that procurement, as we've always advocated, should just be independent. I think from what the previous speaker has said, I really support that, because if you have a procurement that reports to the CFO, there's nothing that can happen. You will take the instructions. And also what we need to change from, I think, the first person speaker who did speak here, is actually the professional. Because if you look at who sits in procurement as well, because people are unable to stand their ground. If you look, for example, to those in the past decade, those who stood their ground where they are at today, I think you understand or you know what happened. Thank you.
Thanks, Sibongile. Hey, Mark. Mark, I think there's something like 720 different procuring entities in the country, and they certainly didn't look at all of them. So this is not necessarily a comprehensive review. Your thoughts, Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. This is a great presentation and discussion. Yeah, I do think there are obviously institutions where, let's say, they practicing, integrity and ethics, but in general, it is looking pretty bad. But I just wanted to share some a research that was done in the UK, where they asked thousands of individuals, if you can steal £1 million and get away with it, would you do it? And the majority of those individuals profiled said, absolutely, if I can get away with it, I'll do it.
I'll do it.
And so there's for me a simple principle, and that, it's a bit sad, but as humankind, we are inclined to, do bad things if we know we can get away with it. The only thing that prevents people from stealing in general is consequences. And if we don't have a good system of consequence management, and if we're not willing to enforce it, then yeah, we will continue to have these problems. In Japan, if you're a public servant and you steal, you are kicked out of that public service for life, and you've got a very high probability of going to jail, and you lose a big portion of your pension. Your pension. So serious consequences. We won't talk about China, but the simple thing is we need consequences. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Abigail says, agree with all the speakers. For me, it's not one over the other, but all the reasons that have been said. It's the ineffective rules and regulation, practitioner process methods, and leadership. Hi, Mark. Go ahead, Mark.
Thanks, Sean. I see my hand was still up from previously, but I have got a question. So, I like the recommendations that are made in this report, and I think they would definitely help to strengthen the SCM system. So my question is about the report, the stature of this report, the weight. Can government just ignore this now? These are some very specific, solid recommendations to address the challenges we're facing. Yeah, I'm just wondering, you know, this report is not, let's say, a mandate that has to be adopted and followed. So what is your feeling around the uptake of these recommendations? Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. I've been giving a lot of thought to that, and I think there's a big risk that some of the statements in the report can be misinterpreted. I think that we need to be sure that we are holding National Treasury to account on many of this. When I say we, I think certainly, and this is one of the thoughts that Prof. Geo is busy with, is that civil society is probably going to need to step up to the plate now and get very, very involved in ensuring that these recommendations are indeed carried through. So I think there is a concern that some of the stuff could be, you know, not necessarily taken real cognizance of. You're right. And so Prof. Geo is actually suggesting that civil society is going to need to get involved. It will be an interesting one on that one, civil society's involvement in this one. Mark, and you've had some experience in that space, so I think that will certainly be one to watch. You know, just as I was going through it, I could see so many places where, for example, National Treasury could look at something and say, there we are, we've got it, it's in the Public Procurement Bill, no problem. Here we are, we've got a regulator, and the regulator's got the tribunal. So yeah, and we've said in the bill that it needs to be independent. So let's, you know, we're on track. I think there's a risk of that happening, and we are going to need to hold the Treasury to account on this stuff, because I think it's too easy for people to just overlook some of the stuff that's in here. Any other thoughts that you'd like to share? I was just going through some of the statements. Thanks, Abigail. I'll get these. Is that Mark again? Is that your hand again, Mark?
Yes, Sean. I'd like to get help from, you know, the participants that are with us today, because I fully agree what you're saying, and Geo's comment about, you know, citizens stepping up, getting, you know, professional bodies, academia, etc., on board to really, in a way, hold the state accountable for these recommendations. But my question is, how do we bring government to the table? So, you know, I mean, we can establish some type of platform, we can bring stakeholders together, and I think, you know, civil society, even officials and and other stakeholders will run to the table. But you know, key stakeholders like National Treasury might not. How do we influence them to bring them to the table? How do we get closer to National Treasury, you know, DCOG, DPSA, some of the key stakeholders that we need maybe to support to adopt and implement these recommendations? So I'm really looking for any advice or bright idea. Thanks, Sean.
Come on, let's open that up. That's the question. So Nelly, I think you need to come in here, but let's ask Frans, if you don't mind. I'm just going to ask Lindiwe to respond first. Hey, Lindiwe.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Mine is not a response as such, Sean, but it's just a suggestion to you, because we are now talking about the influence that the civil society can bring regarding what we are currently discussing. So I was just thinking that perhaps we can invite organizations like AfriForum and OTA to this platform, just to get their views in terms of all these things, and not only the state capture report, but also the report which was issued yesterday. So it's just a suggestion to try and bring in those two civil society organizations, because I know that they are very active, and we all know that AfriForum 9 out of 10 times, they normally win their cases.
Mm.
Thank you.
Good
Yeah,
one.
sure.
Good one. Go ahead, Sanele, and then we'll go to France. Go ahead, Sanele.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Yeah.
So why I asked you to potentially comment on Mark's point is you're with the provincial treasury. And so Mark's question was, how do we get government to the table and hold them to account on these issues?
Yeah. Although I'm not so sure if it may be a solid response, but I would suggest that firstly, at National Treasury, the current acting Chief Procurement seems to be a listening man. So I think if we can try and have a roundtable with him and try to put our points forward to say, look, this is how we think these things should happen. Because we really can't turn a blind eye on this recommendation. So just to get a feel, how can we chart a way forward as the interest group and working with government? Because remember, they are also hoping to find someone who can make their life easier in trying to mitigate the current situation. But now the situation is that in government, to solicit these ideas, you have to pay, or you have to go a procurement route and find a consultant. So if we can maybe try and meet and maybe schedule an appointment with the Chief Procurement Officer, the acting Chief Procurement Officer, to say, look, without you even trying to look into your pocket, let's come and have a roundtable and discuss these things, try to find a way forward. Even at a provincial treasury level, then it's easier for him to say, look, there is an extended SCM forum. We always have a supply chain management forum for treasuries. So we can then extend that SCM forum to then include the interest parties like this group and maybe the other interested groups, find a way forward in the solution.
So Nele, if there was to be a call to the OCPO to say, what is your response to these recommendations? And there was to be, politically or through the process that this report is going to go, that there was to be a call to say, OCPO, what is your response to these recommendations? Would the OCPO consult with provincial treasuries, consult widely on this thing? What's your perspective on that one?
Yeah, it could depend. It could depend really if they would be able to respond as the National Treasury norms and standard alone, or they would want the provincial treasury also to have a say. Because most of the time, the provincial treasuries always want some guidance from the norms and standard at national level. So if he has a direct response, or he has everything to say, he can then probably gather his team and try to craft a response. But I see it's possible also to rope in the provincial treasuries, try to find a sense of how are the provinces feel. But we can't shy away also from the fact that the report as it is, it's also going to be challenged immensely politically.
Yeah.
So, because it's going to change quite a lot of things. If you look at the recommendations as they are, although some of them need to be relooked at and need some flesh, if they were to be implemented, at least a bigger chunk of wrongdoing may be eliminated. And we must understand that wrongdoing is not happening by mistake. It is a deliberate action. So that also those who are benefiting from the system that is incapable may also challenge the report, say, look, we want to overturn the report, we want to overturn the findings, or there will be a lot of criticism. And the thing is, the interest groups that may influence the report are those, to the point that they take to court, are those that want the status quo to remain. So hence, also on our side, we have to step up and say, look, we also on this side, we want to adopt the report, and we want to add more in terms of the details of how to craft some of these institutions or these agencies that have been brought forward.
Is there a province that you think that might put their hand up and from a provincial treasury perspective, put a draft response together? Or do you think the provinces might just sit back rather and wait for National Treasury to respond? I'm not suggesting you do that. I'm just saying that that's probably unlikely.
Yeah, you see, the thing is, there is this also this existing bureaucracy that you sometimes allow a national department to deal with such matters, and you, as a provincial department or as a provincial treasury, you may influence the process, but you have to via through the national treasury. So even if I would say maybe in case then we can raise a hand up, but it could be in liaison with the national treasury to say, look, let's influence this cause, let's try and work together and do this thing. But I can say in case then we can try a positive response. I'm not sure about other provinces, but we can try, because I'm not sure if there are other colleagues from other treasuries in this session.
Indirectly, there are some, and there may even be a National Treasury person. We did have somebody last week, so I just want to check on that one. Thanks, Danele. Let's just jump to France, and then we'll come to Tabella.
Good morning, Sean, and everybody. Thank you very much. Concise, as we know, you always do. I think we must not lose sight of the fact that all public or most public entities has got a huge skills base that we can tap on. I mean, to my mind, the problem, yes, absolutely. To my mind, the problem is a political one, where the political sphere interfere in what the public officials do and can do, and the advice that they give. And too often those public officials are ignored, and those that's not ignored fears their futures. You know, that's what we've seen with Athol Williams sitting overseas at the moment. So whistleblower protection, I think, is going to be critical coming out of how to prevent this from recurring. And then I've heard some names mentioned. I've got no doubt that we need to start tapping on the skills in civic society. We've heard of a forum, there's Sakeliga, there's Free Market Foundation, FMSF, there is SAIRR, there's the Corruption Watch, I see their name has been quoted there, AfriSake, OTAP, all of those have got, and they would be making submissions, I've got no doubt about this. I think it's time that we stop working these type of things in isolation, and that those parties should ideally actually pool their resources so that we don't have these comments and feedback on this report done in isolation. You know, history, nobody can change that. We all need to work to learn from what went wrong. How do we stop that and make sure that whatever mechanisms we put in place protect the public going forward? Because if that doesn't happen, this situation will repeat itself, and we need to put in all measures to protect the people that is in positions to make it happen. I mean, procurement is critical for the economy, and if there's problems in procurement, how can an economy grow? It cannot. It's simple reality. The money is just siphoned elsewhere where it is not needed. where the people that is desperately awaiting is not getting it. So I think we need to get those entities to start talking together. There's a huge duplication in resources, and I always bring an example to the table in this regard. Do you know that Save the Rhino, there is 250 organizations in this country that is working towards saving the rhino? Imagine if they could pool their resources, the money, etc., coming into that. Now, the same in this instance. There are many people that can add value. Thank you.
Go on. What does the garden route say, Tabelo?
Sean, maybe just the things I just want to maybe touch on. One is the status of the report, of this report.
Yes.
There's a lot of untested stuff in there, you know, because unfortunately for us, for items to give both sides of the story and be able to test some of the matters that were found out here, it needs to go before a court of law. So there's a lot of issues here where people are not able to defend themselves, or those that said things to provide the relevant evidence. So it will be interesting to see how this goes further as far as some of the findings that were identified in here. Two, the Auditor General. You know, we can talk about potentially bringing third parties that can assist, but we've got a very key institution, which is the Auditor General.
And the AG.
And, yeah, the AG, and there was an augmentation in terms of of some of the powers that they can do. Why maybe not change a bit of the scope in terms of what the AG does and ensure that it works, you know, it works with some sort of law enforcement space, whereby some of these findings that are critical, they can be further taken from the AG, further investigated in that space. Then at least you know that when the AG walks into each and every public institution, they've got teeth to actually, you know, remedy some of these issues, because a lot of the findings is always left up to the accounting officers to do something about, and hence to this day, an accounting officer will not work against himself, you know. So maybe we need to augment in terms of how the AG works and align them to some sort of law enforcement agency. And thirdly, in terms of professionalizing the procurement space, there is SIPs. Why are we silent about SIPs and act like procurement spaces?
Yeah. I mean, you put SIPs down in the comments, and they're not focused on public procurement, Tabelo.
No, but what I mean is that there is nothing wrong in working towards a public procurement space within the SIPs framework, because
okay.
Yeah, already government has minimum competency space where they, you know, it is a requirement for procurement specialists to have a certain minimum competency standards. So work with SIPs, align that, take them out of minimum competency, and yes, a focus training space for procurement specialists. Then at least you've got a stepping stone to work on.
Good point. We certainly need to unpack a little bit more around the Council for Supply Chain Management in South Africa. And disappointed to see that their website is down. Mark, I don't know if you noticed that. It's
I did notice. I'm also sad.
So yes, let's see. Hopefully that things pick up there nicely. Thanks, Tabelo. Lovely perspectives, and yes, a lot more to do. So Nella, you want to come in, and we're going to start wrapping up now, and then we will have some discussions. I've got a thought that I want to share with you just in closing, and ask for your feedback on that. Go ahead, short one, Sanele.
Sure, thanks, Sean. In fact, I wanted to raise this point when you were dealing with the issue of the tribunal. The independent regulator, and it also will be acting as a tribunal. And my worry is, how is it going to operate? Because, you know, currently one of my...
Are you talking about the tribunal that's mentioned here, or the one that's mentioned in the draft public procurement bill?
The tribunal that is mentioned here.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. If normally the tribunal, one of the roles will be to address the grievances from the business people or from the bidders before the tender is finally awarded. And you understand that there's quite a lot of work. It may delay the service delivery. So if you think of it...
So Nele, may I just make a comment for the rest that may not know that you do have a tribunal in KZN?
Yes,
and so you speak with some real context. Go ahead, Sanele.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So the number of cases that get received by the province alone sometimes it takes time to address them. So if you get to receive these cases at a national scale, remember, you're including everything now. I don't know if the service delivery could be achieved at that level, but maybe if that tribunal will then be a national competent but be present at all the provinces, maybe the legislation then could cover it correctly. And another one I saw that they wanted to do with the sole source.
Yes.
They wanted to do away with the sole source. I'm not sure if they want to do with the sole source or they wanted to say a single source.
Yes.
Because the way they worded it, it looks like it's a single source. However, in both ways, the sole source, I'm not sure if you can do away with that. Because if you look at the items that have copyright, like Microsoft, there's no other way you can buy those things except to go to Microsoft. So if you're doing away with that, you are actually saying then we are forced to create a middleman. That's the first point. Even if you're doing away with the single source, there are things that sometimes may also create a havoc. If you understand the current situation of government buildings, most of them are under lease. And you find that during the procurement processes, the tender gets to be appealed, sent to the tribunal, it's delayed for months, and the contract expires. They may extend it, and after a few extensions, they may request to say, look, let's do away with this contract and let's do a single source directed to our current landlord, because we can't move now with these current projects under the review under the tribunal. So I'm not sure if that could be a proof or some sort of a solution to do away with those two. Those are the points I wanted to make. Thanks, Sean.
Good one. Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, Anele. What I suggest, and this is part of the thinking that here Kino has got as well, is we've got to pick on specific recommendations and then get into those recommendations in more detail. So he's going to continue to dive into some depth in the agency, and that that will probably continue. And I think let's dovetail from our perspective what we do on that one. But I'm going to, in the next while, just pick up on specific recommendations that we could probably dive into a little bit more as a community. And maybe we bring into that discussion then some of these entities that, for example, Lindiwe was mentioning and France was mentioning, and just do a bit of a workshop with those folk to unpack those and maybe ask some specific questions. And my thinking is that we probably need to find not just civil society, but possibly some respected academics and others to pick up on some key points and make some key statements, and ensure that those key statements are publicized and require a considered response back then from Treasury and from the minister and government in general. I think that there will certainly be, I hope there will be some aspects in part 3 that talk about the question that Mark raised. What has to happen with this report? How do we hold the president and government in general accountable for implementing the recommendations in the right manner? And there hopefully will be something that will come through in the later section. So let's have a look at those parts when they come through, parts 2 and part 3 when they come through. But in the interim, we'll start to arrange some discussion of some of the more specific aspects in here and do a bit more of a deep dive into those. And I've got some suggestions of some people that we will bring into those. I've got to do a little bit more planning on that one. But if anyone has got any thoughts as to who we can bring in, for example, I've got Peter Volmink down. I had some discussions with him last year. There are some of those in the Schedule 2s that testified that might have some comment as well. And we could certainly bring them in to just try and unpack some of these in a little bit more detail. So anything that you think is maybe a high priority for us to focus on, welcome to get your perspectives on that one. And yeah, and then we'll take it from there. But I think this is positive. Although when I went through this initially, I thought, gee whiz, this is a handful of entities that the Commission is basing its findings on. One is it's not necessarily representative of the entire public procurement fraternity, and but it's very difficult to argue against the findings, and we've seen many of those things, and I think there's some good suggestions here which would go towards improving public procurement in our country if we get them right. Any closing comments, and then we'll wrap up for the day. Thanks, everybody. All right, if there's nothing urgent, we'll do that. Please, if anyone does not want anything that they've said today included in the YouTube copy, I will probably split this into 1 or 2 sections so people can dive into it. We can certainly use this one. Angelo, your point is noted, and I think what we're probably missing, and one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot, is that we really need to be putting together a bit of a membership organization for yourselves, for public procurement practitioners. The work will happen in getting that professional body together. One of the things that I found interesting in the recommendations of the Code of Conduct, which was recommended, is they talk about involving and consulting with everybody out there on what should go into the Code of Conduct, but nowhere do they say that we should actually ask the people that are going to sign this. And that's because there isn't a body that represents you. And so we probably need to do a little bit more to put that together. I'm not sure that it's right that you're all forced to belong to SIPS, for example, or SAPEX, as some of you are members of. But we need something that you can be part of. So absolutely, Angela, we'll certainly use this as a way to get that going. Very good, everybody. Jeff Hlungwane, thanks very much, Sanele. We certainly will bring Jeff in on that one. And I know, Sanele, you want to get into professionalization for some time. Very good. Hope that helped. And this is significant, and it's significant for us, and we can't let this go. Take care, everybody. Have a good week.
Thanks, Sean. That was a great session.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Sanele. Hey, Tabelo. Thanks, Mark. I'll probably pull the summary together into one section and maybe have some discussion into a different video for the record. Good one, everyone. All the best.